Hi, my name is Roseanne. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about my experience using Apple's AirPods Pro 2 as my hearing aids. And I'm going to tell you, first of all, how I started to learn I needed hearing aids, my experience with my previous hearing aids, which were Philips, and I got at Costco, and then what led me to using the AirPods Pro and how that's turning out. This is how I learned that I had hearing loss. My mother, who passed away when she was 98 and she lived with us for 12 years, had severe hearing loss. And it wasn't as bad when she first got it, but it got worse and worse and worse through her life to the point it was really difficult for her to hear anything until we got her the last pair of hearing aids from Costco. Looking back, her symptoms were that she had a difficulty hearing certain people, and I was one of those people, and one of my brothers was one of those people. We've since learned it was because our voices fall into a certain frequency range. And so she was constantly saying to me, you need to talk louder, you need to talk more clearly. I can understand everyone but you. Well, now I have some hearing loss. I understand what she meant about that. Then she started complaining that she couldn't hear in certain situations, like certain classes at church. And it got worse and worse to the point that it finally became obvious to her that she needed to have her ears checked, and sure enough, she had hearing loss. So she got her first pair of hearing aids, and they worked for her for a long time. Although when she moved from St. George up with us, and she would go to church up here, she was constantly complaining, oh, they're not doing the microphones right. The people don't talk loud enough. And she was constantly comparing her ability to hear down there with up here. Well, we figured out that it was really her hearing aids. So at first, getting her hearing aids adjusted worked, but as her hearing declined, those older hearing aids didn't work. It got so bad toward the end of her life that we spent 2 or 3 months when I would go down and visit with her. She could not hear me, and we had to end up just kind of staring at each other. That really wasn't a good situation, and I wanted my mom to hear what I was saying. So we took her down to Costco and had her hearing checked, and they gave her these Philips. She was able to hear so much better that the last part of her life, she and I had some good conversations. She was able to hear me tell her what a good mother she was and how much I loved her, and it was a real blessing. Also got a special microphone so that, say my brother came, he could clip that microphone to him, and then she could hear it, or else they would pass the microphone around and she could hear what they were saying. When we went to church, we would give the speakers the microphone, and they would put it on the pulpit or where they were standing, and then she was able to hear them because the sound went directly to her. She wasn't even aware that that was what was happening, but she wasn't complaining about not hearing. We had some lovely conversations because of the hearing aids. After she passed away, I started to notice that I couldn't understand what my daughter was saying. And so instead of telling her to speak up louder, I suspected that I had some hearing loss. I went down to Costco and had them check my hearing, and sure enough, I had some hearing loss, enough that I needed some hearing aids. And because these were new enough, Costco was kind enough just to transfer them to me. I've never used the microphone, but I have used these, and they help me to a certain extent. When I look back now, I can see that I actually had hearing loss longer than I realized. And there were a couple of symptoms which were confusing because at the same time I had long COVID, which caused some problems in my brain, and I was having symptoms like really loud noises hurt me, just kind of hurt my brain. I couldn't hardly take it. About the same time I started making YouTube videos, I have another channel, I was having a very hard time editing sound. Everything sounded kind of muffled, but not severely, but enough that I thought, well, maybe the microphone is bad, or maybe I just don't have experience, because I couldn't get it to sound good. And as a result, the videos that I did at that time period are all too loud. So if somebody watches those, they'd probably turn down their TV or their phone to be able to manage that. But the reason they were so loud is because I wasn't hearing well enough. And then another symptom was that I was turning the TV up loud enough that my husband remarked about it sometimes. And I started using the closed captions all the time because, as I said, it's just easier on my brain, which was probably true because I did have the symptoms from long COVID. But now I see that my brain was having to work so hard to hear and distinguish the language that it was really easier for me to have the closed captions on. Although I could hear, I just couldn't hear well enough. So when I got my hearing aids, I didn't have to use the closed captions anymore, but to this day I use them because it's more enjoyable for me to use the closed captions. So I got these hearing aids and I used them, and they were good, but there are some drawbacks for me. And by the way, my husband has hearing aids. He got those way before I got mine, and they cost him twice as much as these cost me. So I got these with the microphone from my mom from Costco for around $2,000. My husband's cost him around $4,000, and he didn't have the microphone. A disadvantage that he had is he bought them from a company because it was so much cheaper than elsewhere, but he doesn't have the ability to easily get them adjusted. Where if you get it from Costco, you can go anytime and they'll readjust them, they'll clean them. So anytime you go to Costco, you could go over and they'll clean your hearing aids. So that part of getting hearing aids from Costco is really good. And I think these hearing aids are better than the ones my husband has. Although I think the sound might be better because he has an easier time taking phone calls with them, watching YouTube videos and things on them, where I really don't like the way the sound is. It's too hard for me to take phone calls. I couldn't hear them. There's too much of a delay. And so I turned that off and would just put the phone on speaker when I took a phone call. So there's a difference in his. They both have apps on the phone. I didn't find it worked as well for me. One of the real downsides for me with that Philips is that music sounds off. There's a little bit, almost a wave on them, and even if I use the music sound, that difference for me. And it may be because I'm a musician and I have degrees in music, and I am used to having just really excellent hearing, so this is a different situation for me. If I go in and play my piano and I'm wearing those hearing aids, the piano sounds so off that it almost sounds out of tune, so I can't play the piano wearing those hearing aids. A week or two ago, I saw a press release from Apple that they had received FDA approval to use AirPods Pro 2, and it's really important that it's 2, as hearing aids. You have to have an iPad or an iPhone, and it has to be at the iOS 18. Your AirPods Pro 2 also have to be updated to the most recent version, but your AirPods automatically update. But I had a little trouble with that, which I will explain. I was really excited about that because I have had AirPods for years, and the sound quality of AirPods, like using music and everything around, is so excellent that I just had a feeling that the sound quality was going to be so much better than with my Philips that I immediately bought a new pair. So I already had 2 pairs of AirPods, but I just had this feeling that the AirPods Pro 2 would be so much better for me from hearing aids. I thought it's worth the risk. It's so much less than getting hearing aids, that this could be a real blessing for anyone who's using an iPhone and they have hearing problems. And I really think this is going to rock the world of hearing aids. Of course, if you have an Android, then you have to decide, is this worth it for me to move to an iPhone? Or should I just go ahead and pay this more money for the AirPods? Of course, getting the new iPhone and the AirPods, it's going to be kind of a wash as far as the cost would be. For me, the difference of the sound quality alone is worth it. But I've been an Apple user for years, so I didn't have to worry about that. So keep that in mind. It does cost far less to buy a pair of AirPods Pro 2 than to get hearing aids. So when I received them, because they had come directly from the factory or they'd been on the factory shelves, I bought them directly from Apple because I like to get the Apple Care, and I've had really good experiences buying phones and computers and stuff directly from Apple. So when I got them, they were the down version and they had to be upgraded. The firmware had to be upgraded, and I had some trouble doing that. What normally happens is you put the AirPods in and you listen to some music for at least 30 seconds. Then you put them back in the charger, and after around 30 minutes, they'll just update. Well, these didn't update, and I tried and I tried and I tried all day long, and finally that evening I called them, and there's not really anything you can do to force it or anything they could do to force it. I thought maybe there was, and I talked to a customer service representative who couldn't help me, and then the manager talked to me. They kept walking me through the same things. Finally, they said, okay, we'll make you an appointment to go to the Apple bar and have them looked at. And so I was like kind of bummed about that, but it was going to be the next evening. So that day, I checked it in the morning. It still hadn't updated. But then I got a feeling in the afternoon I should check again, and they had updated. So that was about 24 hours from the time I first tried to use them. Now we know it could take up to 24 hours. How you actually use them as hearing aids is extremely easy. When you put them in, of course they have to be fully charged. When you put them in, it asks you if you want to do an ear test. And so you just say yes. You have to be in an extremely quiet place. So I went into our walk-in closet and sat there. And so you say you want the hearing test, and then it runs a little test to make sure that they are fitted right. It comes with a set of 4 different sizes of the little pads. So it will check to see that they're seated right and that the seal is correct. And if that's fine, it will check to make sure that you're in a quiet enough room. If that's fine, it will begin the hearing aids test, which is exactly like the test that I did at Costco, with one exception. Down at Costco, the lady had me turn away from her, and then when I heard the sound, I'd raise my hand. With the iPhone one, it tests your left ear first, and when you hear the sounds, which are 3 little beeps, you just touch your iPhone. It's exactly the same though. It will start at one pitch, and then it will kind of get softer and softer, and then it'll different pitches. It kinds of move around, and it tells you if you don't hear something, don't worry, it will test it again. So after a while, it'll say, okay, the left ear's done, and then it will do the same thing with the right ear. And then once it's done, it will say, okay, it's completed. You want to see your results. You click on that, and then it will show you. And I have mild hearing loss in both ears. Down at Costco, they told me the one ear was medium loss, the one was mild, but now I know it's just that she was having a hard time really getting the hearing aids set, because Apple's assessment of the situation has turned out to be correct. So when I started using them, I just was immediately shocked at how well I could hear myself. It takes a little bit of getting used to that. You can hear your own voice so well, you can hear room noises so well. You have to get used to that with any hearing aids. But this was more marked just because I could hear so much better, and everything was so much clearer. I play music, of course. I automatically can hear the music. Nobody else can hear it. I can watch YouTube and I can hear it. Nobody. When I get a phone call, it comes in and the quality is excellent. So I can just go ahead and take phone calls and it adjusts the sound automatically. And then when I'm just using them in hearing aids, which I don't have to do anything about, they just adjust. They just adjust and I can hear everything. A really good test was when I went to church yesterday. I could hear just fine with the main meeting, and I actually had an easier experience with the organ. Even though it was louder, the sound quality was better, and so it didn't bother me. But the big test was when I went into the meeting with the women, because women generally have softer voices. So you'll have a room full of women and one woman is giving the lesson and then the other women will raise their hand and they'll contribute. And I really couldn't understand anything at all without my hearing aids. And with my hearing aids, I would still miss a lot, particularly if people were speaking and they had softer voices. Yesterday, for the first time, I heard the whole thing as I used to in the days when my hearing was good. And it was just so pleasant. You have to get used to the idea that people won't understand why you're wearing AirPods. Although I mentioned it to a friend of mine and she said, oh, I knew just what it was because she had seen the press release from Apple. But I am sure there were people in the room that were wondering, why on earth was I wearing AirPods? But I think over time, people will get used to it and they won't even question it. I'm suddenly wanting to call it an AirPad, but your iPhone or your iPad, which you can use either one if they are the right version of the iOS, has to be within a certain distance. And it's like 30 to 50 feet. And I have noticed no matter where I put my phone, anywhere in my home, they work fine. The only trouble I had dropping is when I went outside. I went into the garage to get some decorations. This is Christmas time. And if I got to a further part of the garage, then the sound dropped. As soon as I came a little bit closer to the house, the sound picked right up again. So you'll have to keep that in mind. But most people keep their phone with them almost 24/7, so that wouldn't be a problem. Thing to know about the battery life, if you have regular hearing aids like this, the battery life for me has lasted all day long. AirPod Pro won't. When you're using the hearing aids, it will last about 5 hours. If you're just listening to music, around 6 hours. But the charging case lasts for around 30 hours. So if you keep your charging case with you, then you would never run out of battery. And what some people do is periodically during the day, they'll put their AirPods in there for 10 or 20 minutes, just depending on what they're doing. And then they never run out of battery life with your AirPods. And they will beep a little bit to you to tell you, give you a warning that the sound is running out. I have done something that you don't need to do. I ordered myself another charging case. So I could have two charged and say I need to go away for a period of time, and I didn't want to risk losing my case. I could take the other case with me. But one of the reasons I do that is because I have two pair of regular AirPods that I'm used to. These are gone dead, I'll just go get the other ones on. My husband said if this works out and you want to have another pair as a backup pair, you could do that. First of all, I think if I just keep those in the vicinity and I start having the problem, I can just charge them up again, because it doesn't take long for them to charge at all. Or I can do what some people recommend, just periodically putting them in there for 10 minutes. So, like I said, I've gone a little bit beyond. The hearing aids are so important to me, and the quality of these is so good that I don't want to use these. But I have run into one problem. When I was editing a video, they automatically connected with my laptop. I didn't like how loud the sound was when I was editing. Those hearing aids actually were better, although I have learned to edit sound with my eyes. I know what the sound wave needs to look like. But it did kind of throw my hearing aids off to do that. All of a sudden they weren't working as hearing aids. They were just working like regular AirPods. I went in and ran the hearing aid test again, which doesn't take long. But I've since learned that if you're having problems, then you can just take them off and put them back in. I found out yesterday when I was in church and Relief Society, something was a little loud, so I got the app open on my iPhone and I started playing with the settings, and I'm not experienced with doing that and kind of messed it up, and I was like, oh, what am I gonna do? So I just closed the app and I took them out and put them back in, and they reset themselves, and then I could hear everything normally again. So that was good to know. There are a lot of tutorials out there that will give you all the ins and outs of all the different features, but I am just wanting to use it the easy way, and I probably won't even mess with that anymore, just because the native software has set the sound quality and the sound levels and everything so well that it works. It does take a little bit of getting used to have those in all the time, and I have found that the seal is tighter than it was on my AirPods, my original AirPods. So the idea that it's going to take a couple weeks to get used to the feeling in your ear, I feel like it's correct. These have some disadvantages too. You see that little wire and it's real stiff, and it has to kind of poke in your ear, and I never got used to that, and I never really got used to how these feel. But the worst thing for me is I wear glasses, and because these go back here, they were always kind of interfering with my glasses. If my glasses were in the wrong place, I would hear kind of a high-pitched whine, and then I sometimes like to wear hairbands, and so that whole thing would bother me. But with the AirPods, no problems. Oh, okay, the hearing aids turned right back on. No problems with the hairband or the glasses or anything. So it's just a matter of me getting used to. This ear is a little bit, I know from my other hearing aids, this ear is a little bit smaller than this ear. So this ear is already used to it, and this ear is getting used to it. But I have had them less than a week. I was so excited though, and I felt like this would be a really important video, and I hope that anyone who is trying to decide what to do might really find this video useful. As I said, if you really want to know more technical about all the apps and everything, go to Apple, or there are some good articles out there already that explain all of that. I hope I see you again. Bye.